Welcome back, and today we are going to be playing out the F-18C early. It's the premium, as of right now, 12.7 that you can buy for way too much money, even if it were to be on sale. The Hornet is relatively slow, it accelerates pretty decently, and the maneuverability, while pretty good, also is a massive speed bleeder, so it is kind of hard to deal with multiple opponents at the same time. Together with the kit you have 6 AIM-7Ps in this case and 2 AIM-9Ls, but you can also swap out the outer AIM-7P pylons for double AIM-9L racks. Now I did try this at the start and didn't have much success with it, because at the end of the day radar missiles are pretty damn important nowadays, and that's gonna be the main issue while flying this thing. It's not really the speed bleed, the lack of a top speed, or just the overall package. It's mainly the AIM-7Ps that let it down, and while these are an upgrade over the AIM-7Ms because they have IOG, meaning that when you unlock someone you can relock them and it reacquires the target if it doesn't fly off to the left or right. You can see it here, it's flying off to Narnia into the city, but it's still tracking the guy. Sometimes these missiles go apeshit, keep the lock, very often they will keep tracking, but the issue really is the AIM-7P is not very reliable when you keep in mind that the Russians just have much better radar missiles at this BR. You have R-24Rs, R-27s, and God forbid they have R-27ETs, because you are solidly outclassed. And on top of the fact that you have very slow missiles that you can actually dodge by simply rolling, because your airframe is also pretty slow, the missile is gonna be even slower on top of it. So your missiles are gonna have a very limited effective range if you actually want to combat people that are shooting back at you. If you want to shoot at guys that are just flying straight at you across the map, you can shoot it at like 35 to 40 kilometers with relative ease, but keep in mind that these missiles are very likely not going to be connecting. The radar is okay, didn't really have too many issues with it. You don't have an HMD. The lock-on with the ACM is pretty decent. The pulse Doppler is okay. The TWS does lock onto the air very often and it likes to break lock, but it doesn't really matter all too much since you don't have Fox 3s anyway and you have to maintain a lock regardless. And that is going to be another issue with the AIM-7s on an airframe like the F-18. With the F-18 you do not want to be flying into a group of enemies, which is what RRB is. You are forced to keep flying towards the enemies if you want to keep your missile flying at your enemies. So it's very important to use the gimbal limit and maybe use something like F-pull to outrange an R-27 if they decide to shoot it at too far of a range. Now if you want to know more about these tactics, these terms that I'm using, I made a whole Fox 1 and Fox 3 guide as well as a radar guide. I'll link them in the description if you are a new player. And if you are watching this because you just bought it, I recommend you to take a look at those two videos, because they will give you a lot of information that will come in useful, so that you don't have to go trial and error and die 20 times in a row without getting any kills. Because it's not unheard of at this BR. Fox 1 BR is, in my opinion, one of the most frustrating to play, because notching is virtually impossible when it comes to the ER, for example, meaning that you have to multipass, you have to break lock, you have to utilize tactics to actually outperform these missiles, and they can kind of just look at you and shoot it off. Am I coping here? Am I complaining? No, but the balance is very far-fetched, and that's another issue with this plane, the compression. At 13.0 we have something like the F-15A, which absolutely destroys this thing. Now luckily they happen to be in your team very often, but they are faster, they have the same radar missiles, slightly worse because they don't have the IOG of course, but they have AIM-9Ms. The flight model is better, especially for RRB. The radar feels better, and just overall it is a much better kit. Having more speed in a missile like the AIM-7M makes a very drastic difference. You are not shooting AMRAAMs, which are already good on their own. You're shooting a mid-missile of a platform that isn't that great to begin with to shoot missiles from. But that doesn't mean that you can't kill anyone with them. Luckily, as of right now, a lot of guys are flying the same plane as you, so when you get the missile off first, there's a very big likelihood that you will hit them first. My missile is going off to Narnia, and it's going to hit again. These missiles make no sense. This has been fixed for the most part. This was patch day, and the missiles were kind of buggy. I haven't had any issues with it when I flew it today. But if you get the missiles off first, you mostly get the kill as long as the planes aren't Russian. Against Mirages, against something American, you're gonna be fine most of the time. And I'll demonstrate right here that even at distance, if they don't combat you effectively, you will be able to kill them despite them having better missiles than you. Now my missile flies to the left, but just ignore that for a second. That is not actually happening. We are going to be abusing the gimbal limit. We are going to fly all the way to the left, so that when he fires back at us, we're not flying straight into his missile, meaning that it's going to take his missile longer to get to us. It's also going to be leading us, meaning it's going to lose more energy while doing so I have a big advantage if he keeps flying straight. Luckily, he doesn't fire back at us, so it's very easy for us to just keep guiding the missile in. It hits him out of the air, and the Su-34 goes down. And that's another issue I want to talk about. Almost every match, and I'm speaking like 80 to 85% of the time, you are going to be fighting 13.3s and 13.7s. I was talking about the F-15A. That is only 0.3 higher. If you go a whole BR higher, you start running into grippers and stuff, you literally get nothing done. You are a fish out of water. And the last time I checked, fishes really like to be in water. Kind of like how squirrels really like to be inside of a tree. This plane unfortunately doesn't tell you what you're locking onto, but with the RWR you can deduct that it's a MiG-29 radar, which means it's probably gonna carry ERs, which is also going to be a reason why I'm going to be a little bit cautious. Now, I am able to shoot the missile off first. We go onto the gimbal limit. He shoots a little bit too late, which means that I can keep cranking a little bit. Don't forget to turn last second. That ER has IOG. If you keep flying straight, the missile will go to your last known position, and it will probably hit if you don't maneuver whatsoever. So be careful. It's the same thing with the AIM-7P. If you dodge one, make sure that you keep dodging. Change it up the second that lock breaks, because if you don't, very big likelihood it's going to find your house and pull your pants down. Same thing here, shoot it off first, and it's an AIM-7F, so I know I'm gonna have to shoot first. I just need to be patient. It's scary, I know, but you're better off killing him first and then dodging it, than breaking off and not killing him and then giving him the ability to just guide it in regardless. Now there is an issue with this tactic though. When you shoot them out of the air, you get a severe damage, and guess what it does? It doesn't actually kill them. It will now be able to keep locking onto you, and there's a very big likelihood it kills you. Now what you can do against AIM-7s is just roll them out of the way, and they really don't pose that much of a threat. But if it's an ER, for example, that is a major issue. Now in this case, there is a guy at high altitude, and again it's a MiG-29, so it has ERs. Now it might be a Yak-141, an Su-27, or perhaps a MiG-29, but it doesn't really matter because you fight these guys the same way. We get the missile off first, we let it guide in. Should I have used the gimbal limit? Yes, but I'm trying to close the gap here and he wasn't shooting back at us, and I'm lower, which means that I can simply multipad his missile while making sure that my missile keeps guiding in. And this is exactly what I mean. I get a severe damage. He isn't actually dead. I turn around, I try to get away from him, but keep in mind he has HMD, and he probably has ET, so I started turning preemptively. I look at him, and I notice that he's shooting something at me. We go underneath him, we flare it luckily this time, and we don't end up getting gored, but let's be real, if he had another ET, he probably would have killed me right then and there. Now here for the full game, we get onto the 6 of a MiG-23 that's bombing. I get a little bit lucky with the AIM-9L. Don't expect him to go through the flares all too often, especially at medium to long range. But at like medium to short range, you can get lucky if they don't drop the afterburner, but it's a little bit RNG. Barrage starts coming in, but I'm not really worried about him right now because he's not actually flying at me, and something like a Yak-141 is a lot more dangerous, but he's also on the deck. So instead I'm gonna start locking the guy that is at high altitude. We lock onto his missile, but with this plane it's very easy to switch lock and make the missile go back to the intended target, and sometimes it will end up shooting them out of the air. This is not one of those instances, so we go head on, we basically dodge them both, and then we lock onto the guy that's, again, not at too low of an altitude. I know that that's going to hit if he doesn't actually go down, or if he doesn't corkscrew it properly, so we get our second kill of the game. Now we only have 2 missiles left, which is suboptimal. But you know, it is what it is. We go out of the furball because I don't really want to deal with any of those. As of right now, I am relatively slow. There's a furball going on. They only have 2 missiles. As well as the fact that I have 2 guys that are behind us. And the last thing you want in this thing is Burger King food ladders. You do not want to get jumped when you're working on someone else. You are 100% going to get clapped because you are never getting your energy back. Shoot a missile at him, it goes into the ground, unfortunate. He tries flaring the ground, but he ends up exploding anyway, and then we start committing towards the Mirage. And the second I kill this Mirage, I'm actually probably going to land. I'm right next to the runway. I'm out of missiles, and again, missiles are going to be very important. I try to keep a little bit of altitude to bait him into flying up at me. He does not, but he also doesn't go low enough, and he ends up eating it directly on the forehead. We go for a landing, and then we engage the last guy, who is a MiG-23. Now we are on about 13 minutes of fuel. He just took off as well, so we should be on a relatively similar performance. I did take a little bit less. I take about 16 minutes with a drop tank, so upon taking off I can instantly drop it, and I don't have to worry about bailing out and changing my loadout. I can simply just take back off and save a few extra seconds. We shoot the missiles at him, he goes low enough to multipad, and we are going to be doing the same thing here. I'm not going to be fucking with the R-24Rs. I'm really not feeling it. We go low, the missile hits the ground, we pre-flare for the R-60s, and then we merge with the MiG-23, and we are just going to be slamming that elevator. Now I'm not using the Cobra button, as you can see right here. I'm simply trying to maintain my position. I'm inside of a circle, he has more energy than us, but it doesn't really matter, because I am able to whip my nose around almost instantaneously. We missed the first shot. Luckily this thing is piss easy to aim, because the gun is nicely placed directly in the middle. And that is the ML back to the hangar. And here we have the absolute freak show of a match that I still can't believe actually happened. But here we are. We are one missile down, and we are coming from the left side here with the entire enemy team being alive. And our team being completely gone. We shoot at the FRS, he is not really notching, he's gonna start flying away from us, so I thought, well, maybe the AIM-7P will end up tracking, but it ends up hitting the ground for no apparent reason, and we have to go for him again. You're gonna start locking him, but I realize that I'm close enough to the point where I can just use my gun. The second I shoot, he dodges a little bit, but it doesn't matter, because he is not paying attention whatsoever. First missile starts coming in from the left hand side, and unfortunately at this BR, when it's one, there is going to be multiple, and when there is multiple, the F-18 is going to be returning back to the Nimitz, because it is not going to be doing all too well. I'm going to be trying to get out of here. Unfortunately, we get cut off by the F-18. We shoot at the same time. I'm going to be trying to go for the multipad. My missile hits him directly in the forehead, and we are going to continue running away from here, because that is not a winnable fight. I don't mind a MiG-23. I don't mind an F-18, but both at the same time is going to be slightly more tedious. So I'm just going to try to get a little bit of separation from the main pack of enemies. I'm not close enough to turn around and shoot a missile at them either, because what's going to end up happening, if that MiG-23 has an R-24, I'm going to be ending up right in his montage, and I'm going to be trying to avoid that. So we try to use the terrain here, as the MiG-23 is gaining on us very, very quickly. We turn on ACM mode just a little bit prematurely. We use the terrain here to block their shots, and we're going to start our little turn. I could have gone head on with the F-18 here, but he shoots a missile at us. We are forced to turn in and dodge it. F4S coming in, we shoot at him with a missile. He is going to be dodging that one without any issue somehow, and we just are forced to turn flat. We lock onto the MiG-23. We are not able to launch, so we just go into dodging the head-on. F4S behind us, F4S above us, F-18 coming in. That's the one I crit earlier, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't really matter. He ends up hitting the ground anyway. F4S comes in, we dodge most of their rounds. One of them slams into the ground, another slams into the ground after eating a missile, and all that's left now is the F-16 that has triple my energy, that is also above us. He is totally not gonna pitch down and kill me 20 seconds after I cut the clip. Israeli F-16 on the deck. Now unfortunately she is flying very, very low, and my missile is gonna end up hitting the bookcase instead of her, and I wasn't really gonna chase her down since she's flying into my team, but the entire enemy team is in front of us. We need to turn around regardless, and this is really the only way I can go. So I instead just decide to chase her down anyway. So what we do here is we just kind of wait for her to pass out of the terrain. If I shoot now, it's just gonna hit a mountain, and I don't want that to happen. I end up shooting an AIM-7P, and yes, he is flying cold, and yes, he isn't very high, but he is also bombing, and most of the bomber players don't really bother trying to dodge any missiles whatsoever, other than trying to flare. So I instead opted for the AIM-7P, and flank goes into the graveyard, and we start flying away from the main battle. We go into the terrain here, we try to keep our distance, and I'm just trying to look for stragglers. I'm not trying to fight multiple people at the same time. That mostly ends up going pretty badly. So I'm just looking around, Su-34 on the right, which is a plane I don't really want to run into. At least not at range when he's looking at me. At close range, I absolutely shit on that thing, and it doesn't have an HMD, so I'm not really too worried. But it's a plane that I don't really want to run into when he's actually paying attention. We shoot an AIM-7. It doesn't end up tracking because he goes into the multipad. We just switch targets, we shoot another missile, and we wait for it to guide itself into the enemy. You saw it hit the ground right there. And a little bit later I'm gonna maintain lock because I know it's still on the way. There is no way that actually went into the ground. And there is the severe damage. He is gonna be dead. We are gonna be turning around. And we are gonna again look for a straggler. And in games like this, the F-18 feels very good to play. I like the way it feels. I like the way it handles. I kinda like how it looks. I like everything about this plane. Except the way it actually plays in a regular game. It is not forgiving. It is not very intuitive, and very often you have to play it like an absolute rat. The second you see multiple people at the same time, you are basically boned. You can only engage one, maybe two people at the same time, and all of them are gonna be shooting at you. You're forced to break off, and now you really can't do anything, and it's relatively annoying to play. The 12.3 version is a little bit better in that regard. I had more fun in it, but I just had the worst session known to man, because I kept dying to team kills, disconnecting, and you know what? Patch day has been very unforgiving for me. And then we have the one at 14.0, which does solve a lot of the issues of the F-18, where the missiles are the main issue and you have 10 AMRAAMs, but the other issues are still very much apparent and your enemy planes are just even better. The flight performance is just not it, especially at 14.0, and while the AIM-120s are pretty good, you are going to be launching them at Mach 1 at most, making the AIM-120s not that fantastic anymore. They're still pretty good, they're still Fox 3s, but you know, the launch platform is half of the battle. And that's essentially all I have for you today. Don't forget to check out the guides. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.